Hi there, welcome to the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Lindholm. And I think it's time for us women to shift the conversation in business and step into our feminine leadership to do the most iconic work the aesthetic industry has ever seen. Each week, I'll be bringing a powerful dose of strategy, sarcasm, solutions, and sass that will rev up your creativity and ignite your brilliance as you link arms with me along our shared path of personal and professional growth in 20 minutes or less. Let's go. Hello, leader. Welcome back to the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Lindholm, and thank you for tuning in this Monday morning to this week's episode number 102. Today, we're going to discuss the oh-so-dreaded reality of having difficult conversations with employees. But before we dive in, I want to make sure you know that we have just opened up the application process for our next class of Confidence to Scale, our 6-week business growth certification program for in-demand injectors who are looking to develop assets, hire team, and build a backbone for their business that allows them to move from overworked injector to bossed up CEO. So be sure to head to klcconsultants.com/scale to learn more about the program and submit your application today for our spring program. Doors will be closing soon. I can't wait to see you over there. Okay, I decided to record this episode this week after a very powerful call with our Confidence to Scale graduates relating to an episode I recorded a few weeks ago called Loving Yourself as a Leader. If you haven't listened to that episode, it's episode number 99. You'll want to go back and check that out after this one to really put this into a clearer context. But the gist is basically this. So often as leaders, we question our ability to cultivate an environment where our employees respect our authority and, let's be real, actually like us and want to work for us. And it's sort of this tug and pull between needing to set boundaries, hold employees accountable, and yet also inspire them to take autonomous and passionate action to move the needle in our business without us telling them what to do all the damn time. Am I right? And look, leadership, it's not black and white. It's not even gray. It's like a tie-dye illusion that moves like bubbles in a lava lamp. Cracking myself up. You can't shape it. You can't mold it. You can't define it. But you can learn to allow yourself to be you. Accept that all your flaws are also what make you special, and embrace the idea that it is a learned skill that can be mastered with practice. And I don't mean just learning, but learning, listening, implementing, and reiterating, making mistakes and approaching situations with a new perspective and repeating that cycle. You know, as amazing as we may be at hiring a great team, managing them up, training, coaching, mentoring, really, there's not a business owner I've ever met in my life that hasn't at some point eventually had to deal with an unfavorable situation with an employee. Sometimes even the best employees need to get reined in as they become comfortable and cross dotted lines of authority. And sometimes it's new hires that just need to be shown how things are expected of them in your business. And unfortunately, most business owners wait way too long to have difficult conversations because they have a sour taste in their mouth about structure, discipline, and accountability for their team. Instead, they worry so much about keeping their employees happy so everything stays kumbaya. But the problem with this is a bad employee is like a virus that will silently kill the culture of your company and create drama. And this drama and unacceptable behavior will spread and strangle your business. Instead, becoming comfortable with uncomfortable conversations will literally transform your relationship with management because you'll have the confidence to nip problems in the bud as they arrive instead of letting them fester. So today's topic is so important because performance management is really like the speedometer for how fast your car is driving. And I hope this helps you develop a consistent practice for managing poor performance and dealing with scenarios that are below expectation in a timely, orderly, and unemotional manner before your car speeds out of control or halts, right? So my goal for this episode is to help you understand the following in really 3 parts. Number 1, what needs to be in place to establish clear expectations with employees? Number 2, where performance management goes wrong and mistakes that you could be making. And number 3, how to have an unemotional conversation with an employee about poor performance. All right, leader, let's dive in. Part 1, let's discuss what needs to be in place to establish clear expectations with employees. Oh, goddess, this is really step number 1 to managing performance. The key to preventing the need for having difficult conversations all starts with this. And that's helping our employees really understand what is expected of them. And I like to look at 3 different areas when I'm developing a role or delegating a task. And that's number 1, results-based and behavioral-based expectations. Number 2, deadlines. And number 3, benchmarks. So my oldest son, Cooper, recently turned 13 and he wanted to start doing chores for money. Now that he has a little more independence, he wants obviously cash to go to an amusement park or to the movies. And so we agreed upon a set of chores for $10 a week. Week 1, he did them perfectly and I paid him $10. It was amazing. And then week 2, he did some of them and then he asked for the $10. And I told him, you didn't do it to the level I expected, Cooper, so you're going to earn $8. And he was like, well, Mom, you didn't tell me that there was a level, as if there are multiple variables to emptying a dishwasher, right? But you didn't really tell me what you wanted me to do. And so in any case, it turned into an argument and I gave up and told him he couldn't earn an allowance anymore. So the next week I asked him to do chores and he said no, because he wasn't getting paid. I proceeded to explain that we're a family, everyone needs to pitch in. And he said, well, I'll do that if you pay me. And then I basically turned myself into a 13-year-old because I can't handle it. And then I have to go get dad involved. But the lesson here is a classic business management lesson that I wasn't explicitly clear to what level I wanted, in this case, clothes to be folded, like not just folded, but put away in the drawers. So he thought he had done his job and I was not satisfied with the outcome. I really wanted him to get the clothes out of the dryer, fold the clothes, walk the clothes into the bedroom, put them away, right? Like, is that too much to ask? But in any case, what would have been a better approach would have been for me to show him how I wanted it done, write down each expectation fully, and then watch him after each task that first week to make sure it was done right. At the end of the day, it was no one's fault. And P.S., if anyone does have a solid chore system for teenagers, please send me a DM on Instagram because I'm struggling here. The other thing that happens is sometimes our clients will tell stories about a staff doing a fine job at something, but they had such a bad attitude that it's uncomfortable to be around them or watch them huff and puff about doing it. Very often expectations are more than just the act of doing, but also how you show up doing it. So to be very clear about your expectations of what you want done, how you expect them to do it, when it's due, and when to check in along the way is critical. And then we move into the next step, which is part 2, which is to really identify, acknowledge, and accept where you can use some gentle improvement in the managing performance area. So the main culprit is typically just a general lack of feedback in your practice. And this lack of feedback can be a big problem and is typically the catalyst for ongoing issues. I think this happens because we're trying to please everyone or be the cool boss. We're too worried about our employees' reaction to our feedback and just don't want to deal with it. We're worried about our own reaction, like maybe you'll flip a lid and do something non-compliant, or maybe you'll cry, right? We don't have a consistent practice for checking in, having meetings, or fluid interactions in the office, or we just don't have a formal management system in place. So maybe we don't know how to engage in these conversations, or wait for it, maybe we're too busy, right? I get it. And I will mention, if you're trying to be the kind of person that everyone likes, you will indefinitely compromise the respect they have for you and your expectations. Remember that leadership isn't about being the most popular person. It's about creating boundaries, holding everyone accountable to them, and creating a structured environment where everyone can safely succeed because they are being well-directioned. And PS, they can like you along the way, but that just cannot be the primary goal. And so in order to design a practice for consistent and really relative feedback, you need to have these 5 things in place. So write these down. Number 1 is established expectations of PMP, which is production and performance. I will tell you that 90% of the issues I deal with in my consultancy are related to behavior, not skills. So we really want the catch-all here, both what an employee should be doing and how they should be showing up doing it. The second piece is role clarity. So what is actually their job and how does that fit into the client journey? It helps to have a really clear people plan. Perhaps you build out an org chart, and then there are standard operating procedures for each role. Piece number 3 is KPIs. What results do you expect that role to produce? So here you want to be as specific as possible. What is the end goal here? Number 4 is individual productivity and developmental goals. So here's where you want to help your employee understand how they can grow within the organization and really develop mastery of their role. And then finally, feedback on progress, not just outcomes. So this is really where you want to be constantly checking in and evaluating milestones along the way, not just evaluating that employee when they get to the end of the project or, the job's fully done. This is the example I gave with Cooper, my son, right? Showing them what I want and then checking in along the way to make sure that along the path, it's going well. Usually it's like a 1-degree turn that turns into a major imbalance or a gap in the way that something is produced, in the way that they act. And so it's just about checking in and steering your employee along the way. Do you, leader, have these 5 checkpoints in place? So established expectations on performance and production, role clarity, KPIs, individual productivity and developmental goals, and feedback on progress, not just outcomes. If you don't, this would be a great place to start for you. So let's move into the final juiciest part number 3. Let's walk through the steps on how to have an unemotional, practical conversation with an employee about their poor performance, okay? So a recent article that I found by Clear Company talked about performance management strategies and how they encompass everything from really feedback, reviews, career development, direction, and that when organizations are more purposeful in developing or improving their performance management, they experience really great rewards. So one study found that even though their changes weren't exactly quick or drastic, soon after implementing a more purposeful performance management strategy, 70% of employees reported feeling more valued. In this same article, it cited that about 75% of employers rate teamwork and collaboration as very important, yet only 18% of employees actually get communicated to through an evaluation or a performance review. Wow. Another stat was that 86% of employees and executives cite a lack of collaboration or ineffective communication for workplace failures. So collaboration statistics speak for themselves. And when communication breaks down, we start to see a lot of redundant or duplicate work, reduced quality, and frustration among team members. Collaboration shines a light on all the little nooks and crannies in which these issues start and they begin to fester. It provides checks and balances, keeping the responsibilities of individuals in line with the greater goal of the team. So the main idea here, consistent communication is key. Think of it like parenting. It's not just about punishment when something goes wrong. It's about guiding your children to learn, understand, and identify with a value system each and every day so that they are in position to make the right decisions independently. So when you check in with them and they're off track, it's a moment for correction, perhaps a point to avoid disciplinary action altogether. In our academy, we train on a tool that acts as a communication filter for you and your employee. Our clients will use this to document their thoughts, action plan, and communication points prior to engaging with an employee when a conversation is difficult. So this tool is designed to help our clients give feedback on behaviors as well as measurable results. And we have found that when this tool is used properly, it really helps steer the conversation away from emotional suggestives or opinions like, you're always late, or Susie, you're constantly on your personal phone, or Betty, you failed at that system once again. Instead, this tool helps our clients move to a very clear, concise, and specific dialogue and action steps around the root of the issue. It follows this sequence. Number one, discussion of the issue. What actually happened? What are the facts, right? So instead of you're always showing up late, when did that employee show up late, right? Or instead of you seem to be missing a lot of team meetings, when exactly, what meeting, right? So we're getting very specific about what happened. And then we talk about the impact. How did this affect the team, the business, or the individual? Next, that's time for discussion. And that's where a dialogue opens up that allows the employee to share their perspective and be heard without interruption, opinion, or sidebar conversation. So this is one of those things where you're like, Susie, tell me, why did this happen, right? What's your perspective here? And Susie's going to ramble on, maybe get emotional, maybe not. And you're just going to sit there and shut up and listen and allow it to happen and not invoke your opinion or take this off track from the facts. So this is really giving Susie a chance to feel like she's being heard and to really listen to why she either had a poor performance issue or had a mishap in what you expected of her. The next step would be to talk about the consequence. So what will happen if the behavior doesn't change or improve? You're going to explain that, again, unemotionally after you've already listened to Susie's piece. And then a follow-up. So this is where you're going to create a firm date to circle back on progress. Don't miss this, right? This is important for you to follow up to show that this is important for you and important to that employee. You're going to put that on the calendar and you're going to make sure that you follow through on that. And then finally is documentation. And this guidance for documentation of this conversation is really to CYA and also to keep a record of any details that you may need for future conversations. So remember, having a difficult conversation, it doesn't need to be painful, emotional, or uncomfortable when it follows a system that allows the employee to be heard, expectations are clearly defined, and there is a consistent follow-up in place to inspect what you expect of that employee. Leader, what are some of your challenges with difficult conversations? I might ask you. When you say you don't like having a difficult conversation, what does that mean and why? I would take a moment today to ask yourself this question. You might realize that your resistance or challenge with people management, it isn't actually even about the people or the management. It's your personal belief about what that means. And you can change that, leader. If you would like to learn more about accessing our performance management training and tools, you can head to klcconsultants.com/join to get on our VIP list for access to our free resources, newsletter, tools, and so much more. Leader, I hope this has been helpful for you and really opens your mindset to the value of consistent feedback, communication, and the power of reframing how you have difficult conversations with employees instead of avoiding them. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I will see you next week. Wait, before you go, hey, if you're vibing with this conversation and you want to join me on my mission to help 100 inspiring and intentional women cross the next $1 million milestone in their business this year, or leader, maybe you want to become one of them, head over to Facebook and join our free community, the Fierce Factor Society. Over there, we're taking this conversation to an elevated level. Get access to resource guides, podcast supplements, guideposts, and direct communication with me, my expert team, and of course, a society of fierce women making big moves and disrupting the status quo in aesthetic wellness. You can link directly through the show notes or head to Facebook and search the Fierce Factor Society. See you there, goddess.